When I was a Muslim, I hated all Jews. It didn't matter who was prime minister, it didn't matter whether they were left wing or right wing or centrist, it didn't really matter. It didn't matter at all, actually. They're all Jews, and we were taught to hate them all equally, without discrimination. This video today is actually in response to Mr. Rahm Emanuel, if I'm pronouncing his name the right way. He is a former mayor in the US and a former American ambassador, and he went to Israel and he made many, many statements. He met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, and he gave a speech at Tel Aviv University, and he made several statements. Now, I want to begin by showing you his initial statement, and where he talks about, basically explains, that he's going to be giving a speech and he wants people to watch his speech, blah, 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 blah. So I want you to first start with actually taking a look at his, pre-speech little video and see what you think for yourselves. So there we go.
Wednesday morning, I'll be addressing the U.S.-Israel alliance, where it is and where it must go. Prime Minister Netanyahu has led Israel, the U.S.-Israel alliance, into a dead end. It's at a tipping point. The status quo is no longer sustainable. We need a path for Palestinian self-determination and sovereignty, and a path for Israel's security. I lay out specific ideas on both peace process, economic integration, and making sure that this region, the Mideast, is more stable and more secure and serves America's interests. I'll be providing you the speech so you can read it, the opportunity to link and watch the speech and the questions at the university, and a direction that also knows and recognizes what we're doing today is not working. We need the leadership and the ideas and the grit to change directions. No longer is it sustainable what the Prime Minister has done for the alliance. We need new conditions, new requirements, and most importantly, a new vision. Hopefully you'll have the opportunity to talk about the future and debate this going forward. Thank you.
So it's actually very interesting because, number one, you have to look at his presentation. He's presenting this as, I have the leadership. I have come with the leadership. I have what it takes to fix the Middle East, which is obviously bullshit. Let's just be honest. Any American who comes from anywhere in America, whether, or any position of power or influence in America, and says to you, I have what it takes to fix the problems of the Middle East, you need to start being very suspicious of them. Because not even the President of the United States can solve the problems of the Middle East. This is actually a fact. We have seen many people. We have seen Bill Clinton, who was willing to offer, huge concessions to the Palestinians and Palestinian statehood. Ehud Olmert, was willing to do this, and Bill Clinton was willing to obviously, pretty much be the patron of this, two-state solution plan. It didn't work out because the Palestinians rejected it. So when people tell you, I have come from America and I have the ability or the leadership or the experience to solve the problems of the Middle East, you have to be very, 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 very suspicious because it's just not viable. Number one, most Americans, and actually many Israelis, do not speak Middle Eastern. They do not speak Arabic, and they don't understand the mindset of the Arab world, which means they think they're going to solve all the problems, but they actually don't know how to. They think that if they sit down and sort of work out, how much money can we give to Egypt, how much money can we give to the Palestinians, and we give them some promises that we're going to be investing in your countries, we're going to be giving you also some, military aid and whatever it is, and then that will make the Arabs sign a peace agreement with Israel, and voila, problem solved. That's complete nonsense. It just doesn't exist. It never worked, and it never will work. If you look at Egypt today, if you look at Jordan today, they're still horrifically anti-Semitic. The Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty, if you want to even call it a peace treaty at this stage, has done nothing. It ended the status of war, and it basically took us into a different stage, which Egyptians today refer to as a truce. This is just a truce. We are in a phase where we don't have war with Israel, but eventually we will have war because that's what Islam says. We are meant to have war with the Jews and ethnically cleanse Jews and liberate Jerusalem. So when people talk about that stuff, a sort of logical, pragmatic solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict, it just doesn't work because they don't really understand the dynamics of how the conflict works and how it's actually, for the overwhelming majority of Muslims, except for countries that are members of the Abrahamic Accords, it's basically about a holy war against Jews. Now, I want to show you just a few more clips, and just bear with me for a moment. Let's check this one. So this is Mr. Emanuel. He met with President Isaac Herzog. I actually have a lot to say on this because I am a council member with President Herzog's Voice of the People initiative. I don't think he should have met him. I don't think he should have given him the honor of being received by the president of Israel, the Jewish state. I don't think he should have met him. As you can see, he's actually also posting the photos in a way that says, I am a presidential candidate. I'm going to be president. It's basically promoting himself. He is 100% promoting himself. You can see this. There is no way you cannot see this. It's very clear. And we want to go to another clip where he's actually talking about, part of his speech, essentially. So just take a look.
The Prime Minister and his government have led Israel into a dead end. For too long, American policy towards Israel operated under the assumption that the best thing Washington can do for Jerusalem is to blindly, to silently stand behind your government, without conditions, without demands, without consequences, even when we disagreed.
Now, that's actually blatantly false. That is 100% false. That is just not true. For many reasons. Number one, the US has never blindly and silently, thrown its support behind Israel without any conditions, no strings attached. That's actually a lie. This never happened. What the US did repeatedly is demand so much from Israel, and demand nothing from Egypt. For example, you're going to see in the 1950s, 1956, when Israel, France, and the UK attacked Egypt and basically took Sinai and took Gaza, it was the US that forced all of them and Israel to withdraw from all of Sinai and pretty much all of Gaza later on. So when you look at this, you come to realize that actually that was never the case. The US also made it perfectly clear to Israel that if you go and have some sort of, military collaboration with the Chinese or anyone else, well, you're going to lose our support. So basically, the US has way too many strings attached to the relationship. They have way too many conditions, and it's just not true. On the other hand, the Americans have basically demanded almost nothing from the Egyptians, Jordanians, and others. For example, the only demand actually that has ever been made to the Arabs was not to go to war against Israel. So if the Egyptian president calls Israel the enemy, that's fine. If the Egyptian president, which we saw recently happening, if the Egyptian president decides he is basically going to not allow diplomatic relations with Israel, which President Sisi did recently, and demote, undermine the relationship, he's allowed to do this. We have also seen President Sisi repeatedly refuse an invitation to go to the White House. The US did not mind. We have also seen President Sisi repeatedly undermine US peace efforts in the region. But we'll come to this point. But for now, I want to also mention one more thing. We have seen the American ambassador, Mike Huckabee, what's basically, stating that he wants to go and visit Cairo to meet with the officials to sort of, manage the tensions and de-escalate the situation between Egypt and Israel. What we saw was that the Egyptians refused. So the Egyptians not only refused President Trump's invitation to go to the White House and meet with the president repeatedly, they also repeatedly refused a request by America's ambassador to Israel to visit Egypt. So the idea that, that the US has given blind and sort of unconditioned support to Israel is actually false. It's blatantly and obviously false. That has never been the case. On the other hand, the US gives aid to Egypt, and Egypt goes and basically has military drills with the Chinese. They go and have military collaboration with the Russians and pretty much everyone else, and no one can stop them because the Americans, they sort of let them get away with whatever they want to get away with. Let's listen to the rest of the speech because it gets a lot worse if you ask me. So let's take a look.
That has been our mistake, and it's been not a favor to you. Unconditional support has produced a prime minister who has presumed that his strategic interest would incur no political costs if he ignored America's concerns about settlements and sparked a regional war. Unconditional support has allowed you to deny food and medical relief to innocent Palestinians in Gaza, leaving the world to conclude that Israelis not only want to kill Palestinians, but they are completely indifferent to their death, to their destruction, and completely indifferent to their suffering. Unconditional support has girded a political coalition in the Knesset that learned it can burn Palestinian farmland in the West Bank, terrorize Palestinian families without consequence. Given all of this, we need fundamentally a new and different approach to this alliance.
Right, so I have many concerns with what he said. Number one, when he says, that this unconditional support basically gives Israelis, sort of the okay or the green light that you can spark a regional war, as he said. This is the talking point of the IRGC. We have an American politician, who wants to be president or potentially vice president. And what he is openly suggesting, and he's also Jewish, as far as I know. What he's suggesting right now is that Israel started a regional war. This is something that Hamas says. This is something that the Qataris say. This is something that Hezbollah says, the IRGC says. This is something that essentially terrorists say and accuse Israel of. So this suggestion is not only false, it's actually the talking point of terrorists. So here we have the American politician essentially promoting talking points of terrorists. When he says Israel sparked a regional war, I'm really not sure what he actually means. I'm not sure he can even provide the evidence to prove this. Can he please tell us what he expected Israel to do when Hezbollah started attacking Israel for months after October 7th? Israel did not attack Lebanon. Israel had no military presence in Lebanon, but Hezbollah started attacking after October 7th in response to Israel's military operations against Hamas in Gaza. The same can be said about the Houthis. The Houthis attacked Israel. Israel did not start attacking the Houthis. The same thing can be said about the IRGC. The IRGC armed Hamas. The IRGC was the main actor driving all these proxies to attack Israel, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis, or Hamas. So the question is, what did he expect of Israelis to do? Did he just expect Israelis not to respond to Hezbollah, to essentially evacuate the north of Israel completely and evacuate pretty much, the south of Israel, and do what? Allow Hezbollah to invade as they wanted to do, have an October 7th style invasion into northern Israel. It really is despicable. It's disgusting and it's stupid because there is no evidence behind this. He does not come with solutions. This is a man who's not coming up with a plan for peace in the Middle East. He is coming up with a plan to essentially promote himself and pretty much make sure that he's sending messages to the Mamdanis back at home and make sure that he's sending messages to the antisemites back at home that he is on their side. So all that stuff is purely nonsense. This is nothing but nonsense. I want to show you something else that he says that's really fascinating. Obviously, he made so many false claims in this video. including the fact that, Israel has been pretty much not allowing food into Gaza. Israel has actually been allowing tons and tons of food into Gaza. We have seen the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have seen Israeli aid organizations, posting about this. We have seen even the UN recognizing the aid that was going into Gaza. But if you are arguing that Israel sparked a regional war, that Israel basically started the war with the Houthis, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, and the IRGC, then there is no point even talking about aid, because the idea that Israel started a regional war is so clearly false that there is no point even talking about aid. Again, this is a man who's parroting IRGC talking points. Now, I want to go to the last clip of him where he talks to an Israeli reporter, I assume. So let me just show you what exactly he does, because it's actually, again, shameful and disgusting.
You know better than I do that there's a different conversation within the Democratic Party about whether Israel should be allowed to buy weapons, even defensive weapons. What do you make of that?
I want this to get across. Israel does not have a problem in the Democratic Party. Israel has a problem in America. And very specifically, a generational problem under 30. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a poll out today. Mandani is more popular with American Jews than your prime minister.
Now, we need to pause here for a moment. We really need to pause here for a moment. So if American Jews have lost all dignity, if American Jews have basically become what I think Prime Minister used to describe this man, Mr. Emanuel, self-loathing Jews, how are we supposed to save them? How is anyone supposed to save you? How is anyone supposed to save you if you look at Mamdani, whose wife celebrated October 7th, and he is a man who's clearly anti-Semitic, who does not believe that Israel should exist as a Jewish state, and expect us to save American Jews, expect us to work with American Jews. If American Jews want to completely destroy America by supporting an extreme socialist Islamist scumbag, let's just be very honest, then what do you expect of anyone else? Like, if they have decided to set their own house on fire, why should anyone give a shit what American Jews think of Israel or the Middle East? Because quite frankly, American Jews today, they're not only completely against the Israeli vision and the Israeli culture and, the Jewish, pride of having a homeland, an ancestral homeland, and keeping it safe, they're actually also against, or somewhat, pretty much they have values that are not aligned with the overwhelming majority of Arab countries. They basically have gone so far left that there is no place for them in the Middle East. They cannot get involved in the Middle East in any way, shape, or form. Because no one is going to support, the lefty American Jews. No one in the region believes in what they believe in. No one believes that, a man can be a woman and all that nonsense. No one believes in this bullshit. So he's telling us American Jews have decided to support Mamdani and set their own house on fire, and we should care. But we don't. No one reasonable should care. Again, if this is what American Jews want, if they want to set their own house on fire, let them do it. We don't give a shit.
I want that to sink in and understand and get your head around where this is.
I want to ask about Netanyahu, a man that you've had, let's say, a complicated relationship with over the years.
That would be one adjective.
Lots of ups and downs without the ups part. I mean, you put a lot of the blame on him, U.S.-Israel policy, perhaps the rise in anti-Semitism as well, the war with Iran. I mean, I wonder whether, have you considered that if he leaves office, once he leaves office, a lot of this would not really change. When you have the mayor of New York, talking the way he does about he doesn't think Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. This doesn't disappear when anything else disappears.
In the great Jewish tradition, yes and no. We do have a difference because I disagreed in 2009, 18 years ago or 17 years ago. I didn't just disagree, I said it to him. Out of respect, that what you will do with your housing plan will lead to two places: endless conflict and the isolation of Israel. If there was a prediction that I wanted to be wrong on, that I would have taken the under rather than the over on a bet. That was the prediction. Now, I said it to his face. Now, the end result, because he didn't want to hear it, he called me a self-loathing Jew.
That's because you are a self-loathing Jew. I mean, let's face it, you are a self-loathing Jew. You went to the state of Israel and you decided, instead of supporting the state of Israel, instead of actually recognizing that there is a regional war, a regional jihadist war against Israel, and a global jihadist war against every Jew, whether it's here in the UK, whether it's in France, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in Belgium, whether it's, God knows where, including in the US, by the way. There is a global jihadist war. And instead of recognizing this, you have decided to accuse Israel of sparking, a regional war. So you are a self-loathing Jew. We have to be honest. This man is a self-loathing Jew. There is nothing to discuss here. And the fact that he decides, to blame even anti-Semitism, as the lady just asked him, and said, you pretty much suggest that, anti-Semitism and everything else that's happened is Netanyahu's fault. But what if he goes? That would not change. And he says, in the Jewish tradition, yes and no, which is bullshit. No one gives a shit what you're talking about here because no one understands what you mean. What do you mean, yes and no? If Bibi goes, would Israel be safe? If Bibi goes, would Jews in America, Jews in Britain, Jews in France be safe? Because Bibi did not exist for 200 years. Bibi was not alive and leading Israel in 1948 when all Arabs decided to invade. Bibi was not leading Israel in 1967 when all Arabs decided to invade. Bibi was not leading Israel in the Yom Kippur War when Arabs decided to invade. Bibi is not forcing the Saudis not to recognize Israel. Bibi is not forcing the Qataris to fund Hamas, to pretty much promote jihad, even and that's also actually according to the admission of Arab countries who are very critical of Qatar supporting jihad and supporting extremism. So the whole idea that if Bibi goes, everything is going to be great is complete nonsense. Again, this man does not stand to scrutiny. And, people like him, he is not in Israel to actually solve the problem of the Middle East. And this is where the whole issue of the Middle East becomes really problematic. And I said this before about Keir Starmer in the UK. I said this about Macron in France. I said this about Biden. I said this even about President Trump. The Middle East is essentially a bargaining chip. You use it to pretty much win the votes of Muslims in your country. You use it to win the votes of lefties in your country. You use it to win the votes to win and make a lot of money from countries like Qatar, from countries like, others across the globe. And obviously Egypt, to please Egypt and have, good relations with Egypt as Macron does. So the suggestion that all of this is Bibi's fault, it's blatantly false. It is unbelievably and incredibly disgusting, from someone who's Jewish to actually say this, to blame anti-Semitism on Bibi, when anti-Semitism has existed in the country where I grew up. It's fascinating. I mean, I'm going to actually mention something. I'm not sure I mentioned it before. In Egypt, when I used to sneeze, sometimes people would just, you sneeze, you got a cold, whatever it is, and you sneeze. And the person next to you would say, Yarhamakum Allah, which is like, bless you. And sometimes they would say things like, Inshallah al-Yahud. I wish it was the Jews. As in, I wish it was the Jews who had a cold. I wish it was the Jews who were harmed, not you. This is how deeply rooted Jew hatred is in places like the country where I came from, in the Muslim world. So suggesting that everything is Bibi's fault, suggesting all this nonsense is not only a lie, it's actually incredibly and awfully disgusting. And this demonstrates that this man is indeed a self-loathing Jew. That's one more thing Prime Minister Netanyahu was right about. Rahm Emanuel is a self-loathing Jew. Thank you very much and see you next time.